Hi everyone, welcome to episode 11 of Demand Decoded. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. And today we've actually got our first ever guest outside of Blend on the podcast, Katie. She's Director of Community at Metadata. And I first met Katie through their community called Demand. And, I saw what a great job she'd done in building and maintaining such a strong community of marketers. So, it was only right to get Katie on and kind of talk about such an emerging topic, B2B community building. So it's great to have you here, Katie. How are you doing?
I am so excited to be here. Thank you. And oh my gosh, I'm just going to die from all the love. But I'm
Awesome.
so
Right.
excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, it'll be great. I appreciate you joining us today. So, let's dive in. As usual, if you're watching live, feel free to ask questions and we'll pick them up as we go along. If you pop them in the comments on LinkedIn, and then we can do this cool thing where we bring them on screen and then we can, really question Katie about B2B community building. So we don't usually do this because we normally have, people from Blend who, are known. But it would be really great, Katie, if you could if we could dive in and explore your background and look at actually how you got into B2B communities and community building.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll definitely give the caveat that most of the roles I have fallen into in my life were things that I did fall into, and I didn't know if they were going to pan out. But anywho, I started off in sales. And I started with recruitment, then kind of transitioned to like traditional B2B sales. Hit my 100 calls a day as an SDR, and then moved into a field sales role selling network infrastructure. And I actually went to a sales conference that I won like a scholarship to from Gong. And it was actually the coolest competition that I had ever been a part of. And Gong had released this information that I don't remember the exact stat, but some of you may have seen this. It was something about how opportunities where you began cussing once the prospect cuss, like, were more likely to close than others. And it helped build like a new level of rapport. And so you had to share stories. If you had the best story, then you could end up winning this trip. So I ended up winning it. And I went to this sales conference in Costa Rica, and it was the coolest experience. And I really went in there with the intention of figuring out, should I stay in sales or should I not? And should I stay at my company or should I not? And so obviously I made a commitment to everyone there our last night. I was like, I'm quitting my job once I find a new job. And so, and it's even funnier too, because I reached out to Max Altschuler. I had just seen a post that he had made like during that trip about how women were like 80% less likely to apply for jobs unless they felt that they could comfortably check, 90% of the box. It was something like that. And so I messaged him on LinkedIn and I said, hey, Max, you don't know me, but I saw your post. And while I recognize I don't hit nearly any of these boxes, I would like to apply to be, it was like the director of content or head of content at Sales Hacker.
Yeah.
And he was so wonderful. He's like, hey, I love seeing this. Like, let's get you an interview. And I got an interview and I went through the interview process, and the recruiter was trying so hard to help me. My degree's in journalism. So I thought, surely I can write copy and like do all this, which is not the same thing anymore. I had to learn that, but it was so lovely. And she was like helping me with my resume. And it was such a great experience. And I met with Colin Campbell, who's the head of community over there. And I remember us having a conversation with the recruiter, and she's like, look, we love you, but you can't do this job. Like, you are not nowhere near, it's not even that you can't hit 90%. Like, you can't hit 20% of these items. And I was like, that's fair. I just thought, we try it out and see. And if it's not the right time, that's fine. But then I remember Colin called me one day. My whole family was over. So I had to sneak to my bedroom, just take Colin quiet. And he was like, he's like, these two roles are about to open. I would love for you to consider them. One is a sales role and then one is community. And I was so on the fence because I was like, what is this community crap? Like, I have no idea what this is. I don't know what this means. Is there even a career path? And we ended up having such a great conversation. And, you know, of course, later speaking with my husband, he's like, you want to get out of sales? Like, why not just take a leap? You can always go back to sales if you need to. And so I took a leap into community, and it's probably been one of the best things I've ever done. And I'm so thankful for all the learnings that I've had from Sales Hacker that really helped me build such a good foundation. Like Colin Campbell's one of the best community leaders I know. And so he really taught me how to build with the community in mind and how to be considerate and remember to be human whenever we're dealing with community. It's not just like transactions. And so that really kicked off my forte into community, and it's just kind of grown from there. And I've done some consulting and built a few communities, and now I'm over here at Metadata. So that's how I got here. My origin story.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, nice and succinct, actually. So I'd love to dive in a bit like to the actual metadata journey, and particularly like, I think it'd be really important to kind of explore why metadata looks to invest in a community and building a community, and, you know, try and help other marketers and businesses understand why they should invest in community, and like when to do it, why it's a good approach, who should do it, and yeah, kind of take us through that metadata journey to reflect that. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So many of you probably have heard this before, so I won't go into too much detail. It was a very unique process getting to be a part of the metadata family. And I just remember my initial conversations with Jason, and he was so excited about building a community, and he was so excited about providing a space for marketers that there wasn't really one like it before. Now, I don't want to say that there was no other communities, but even now, I look at some of the other communities and I don't see it thriving as much. And so that was a really big goal for us, was to build a community where specifically demand gen marketers could come together, could connect and build relationships, can ask questions comfortably. I mean, we've all been on LinkedIn where people just get absolutely roasted and trashed for asking a question. And like, honestly, I don't even know who's asking questions on LinkedIn anymore. They're just sharing their thoughts. It's not like, has anyone done this with LinkedIn, or, you know, are anyone running ads with small budget? Like, no one's asking that. They're all coming to communities now. Anywho, so we really wanted to create a space where people could ask questions and not feel like any question was stupid or be embarrassed. And so whenever we first started talking, Jason had this very exciting goal of building a community in 3 weeks. And I was so freaked out because where I was at before, we were building a customer community, and we had to go through platform evaluations that took 3 to 6 months to get approvals and get everyone that needed to be a part of the conversation a part of it. And then, you know, another like 2 months after that to get the platform set up. So I was just like, sir, this is crazy. And he was like, well, let's keep talking. And so we kept having more and more conversations. And honestly, there came a point in that process where I was like, I really want to work for Jason Wood Up. I was like, man. And I knew at that point I had to be here, because that's exactly what happened at Sales Hacker. Was I started having more and more conversations with Colin and really understanding his vision in where he thought I could grow to be. And I was like, I want to work for Colin. Like, he is such a rock star. And so I had that same feeling with Jason and the team, and just seeing all the amazing things that they had done was honestly outstanding. And so that really brought us on. But when we got started, I mean, we didn't know what we wanted it to look like. And so I've struggled because I've had lots of folks come up to me and ask, like, what should our KPIs be for like a new community manager? What should this look like? And I'm like, honestly, it's really tough, because not one community is going to be the exact same as another. So you can't really compare the success of one to another. And, you know, it's not like you have the same person, same tools, same resources, it's not going to be like that. But also I had a lot of flexibility getting started in just making it a place where people wanted to be, and making it a place where it was valuable and a place where people could ask questions. And so that was a really big jumping off point for us in the demand community. So
Yeah. So what was the mindset behind creating that community though? It wasn't customer focused. It was open.
yeah.
Any demand generation, or yeah, I suppose you'd say like marketer now probably.
Yeah.
It was open. It was free. It wasn't product focused. What led metadata down that route instead of, being a kind of customer focused community?
So I wasn't really a part of those conversations, but now looking back, I imagine it's just like anyone else who wanted to start a community. I imagine it's everyone's doing this. This could be a really great resource for us and a great tool. And I saw so many similarities between what we did at Sales Hacker to what we're doing at Metadata, where um, I think the original thought process, now that I've been thinking about this for over a year now, is marketers want to connect with other marketers to get better. They want to see what other people are doing to learn and level up. And the secrecy of how people are doing things honestly is fairly irrelevant, because you could tell me the exact secret sauce to your recipe, but I will probably not follow it. Like, I mean, how many times do we follow recipes in cooking books? Unless we're baking, like, and even then, like, oh, a little extra sugar won't hurt, a little extra chocolate, And so I think the same thing with marketers is they just want to see, like, what are other people doing, and they want confirmation for what they're doing. So with this community, we're saying, as a marketer ourselves, we're saying we want to learn how to get better. We want to learn what other people are doing and figure out how to replicate it or put our own touch onto it to make it work for us as a company. And then the long-term thought process, I imagine, is in order to be the best marketer that we can be, we need a tool that's going to help us optimize our campaigns, that's going to help us save money, that's going to take stress and time, unnecessary time off my plate. And like, that tool is metadata. So it's like, I mean, it's a long-term sales process. And what makes it longer is, like, we aren't doing sales campaigns for our community members. And so there was honestly, it was incredibly stressful the first 4 or 5 months, because I was trying to figure out how can I show ROI when we're not tracking for ROI things. Like, so honestly, Jason had just built up such a great relationship and such a great rapport with our executives that I think he kind of got like a green light for the community, and then wanted to bring me in to figure out how can we show value that's coming from the community, which now we're doing, which is great. But it just takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, amazing. So I'd love to dive into the start of that journey then. Like, you came on board, I don't know, did you have 3 weeks in the end, maybe? And you had to get this community off the ground, right? Like, what were the building blocks and the process to getting those first few hundred members in the community? What did that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was actually really crazy, because my first day was the day before I started, technically. And I flew out to Denver for our marketing team offsite. And I was like, only met 2 or 3 of the people for interviews. And so I'm just like in a car with them driving to Estes Park and, I don't know how I fit in this team yet. I don't know the dynamics. I don't know the relationships. And so I'm like going through this offsite, and it was really helpful for me. But I really valued the times when Mark, Jason, and I could sit down during that in person and, like, be able to talk through what we wanted this to look like in timelines. And literally, we came back from Estes Park, I think like Friday, maybe. So I was there all week. That Monday, we started planning for the community. We got Slack stood up. We started working on graphics. We got that all ready to go. We had a list of probably 200 advocates, friends, part of the metadata family, whether they were customers or not, and folks that just really believed in our initiative. And so we started, like, sending out messages like, hey, we're about to launch this. We're really excited. And so I think maybe Estes Park, I would say week 1. Week 2 was setting everything up. And I think week 3, like that Monday, we went open to the list. So we stayed in beta mode because we were really back and forth on where would we stay in Slack. And I was very worried about this because migration of communities is incredibly difficult and tricky. And so I was really going back and forth with Jason and Mark, and I was like, if we go to Slack, like we should probably keep it only the 200, not worry about promoting it, just build up good behaviors and then migrate over. But do we even have money to buy a tool? You know, and I just done all this, all these evaluations. I'm like, you're looking at anywhere from 62,000 to like $105,000 a year. So I'm like, this is the reality of what's in front of you. And so we brought people in. You know, I had a whole content calendar of seed posts. And I think the things that people don't remember with it and don't think it through with community is that you have to train these behaviors. And I was just thinking about this at the airport. Everyone walks on the right side. That's to them. That's not like an instinct behavior. That's a trained behavior from, you know, primary school when you're holding on to the rope, you know, with your teacher and you're learning to walk on the right side. Same thing in community. You don't just start posting, like you don't have that instinct to start posting. You have to see it to start that behavior. So we had a bunch of seed questions that I just started posting, and I would schedule them out into different channels. So was it the same thing? And I would have some of my teammates help post as well. And so it wasn't just me either. And then that really started the snowball of getting people to post more and how to reply. Because you can have as many posts as you want, but if there's not replies to it, it's not going to be great. And so that was something we had to really think through and figure out, like what type of posts. And honestly, this was incredibly difficult for me because I'm not like a marketer by trade. And so I'm not a demand gen person by trade. And so I had to figure out what type of question should I even put in here that would matter to my community. So that was like our first 3 weeks of craziness.
Yeah. And, you know, just as a sidetrack, one of the things now that I think you do so well in the community is like you spark those replies. Like as soon as somebody puts a question in the community in one of the channels, like you're there straight away with tagging like 5 people who can answer that question. How do you know who can answer that question? There's 2,000 members, well, you know, more than 2,000 members in there. And like,
there's honestly, sometimes it's just sheer luck. I actually try to tag. That's not the answer you're looking for. No, but honestly, sometimes it's sheer luck. Sometimes I try and tag people who haven't been as engaged. And you know, I mean, this is my job, is to be in this community and see like who's asking, who's replying, are they good conversations? Should I add, you know, other people to the thread who can help support? Like, what does this actually look like? And so you learn about people and what they want to ask and how they ask questions and what they're actually looking for. And so I'm sure you've seen, like, there's been plenty of questions where I'll just go into and be like, can you explain a little bit more of what this actually looks like? What are you asking? And I've had some folks where I'm just like, I've had that conversation 3 times because I'm like, sir, I have no clue. Like, and I'm trying really, really hard to immerse myself in demand gen and marketing. So I'm like, if I don't know, there's probably a lot of people that aren't sure what you're asking. So we do a lot of research on that. But through that, I'm able to figure out who should I tag. Also in the intros.
Do you want to do a little like, I think this is great, by the way, and I haven't seen this in every other community, but like, your what was it? Introduce.
Yep, my introduce yourself channel.
Introduce yourself channel. Like, it's such a great idea, and it's mandatory, right? I think.
Well, I mean, as mandatory as you can make it, you know. I mean, I definitely have in the welcome email, like, you may lose your account if you don't do this, but and oh my gosh, I can't imagine trying to enforce that. But a lot of folks do come in here and do it, which I love. But in there's a question about favorite tools, and there's a question about companies, and there's a question about location and fun facts or something you enjoy doing. And what I love about that is whenever I have a question, let's say about Canva, I search Canva in the community And I'm able to see through the introduce yourself, all these people that love Canva, understandably, it's a great tool. And then as well as the other conversations that have happened about it. So that way I can reference other conversations, or I can be tagging people that may know more about Canva than I do. There's other things in there that sometimes I know how to handle. So I'll help in there. Like we had a QR question the other day. And so it was really cool to actually be able to help support that. But that's a really big thing, is just looking at past conversations, and seeing, and one of the things too is, let's say, we're talking about ad spend, I'm not going to find people who say, oh, fun fact, and something I enjoy doing is calculating ad spend and optimizing. Like, no one's saying that, right? And so I have to, like, honestly comb through past questions and past conversations and figure out who's the right person to bring into this one. So it's definitely a labor of love, but I think it's worth it. And it's something to be said too, because I mean, let's face it, I probably have 15 Slack dashboards right now, or workspaces or whatever. I only go into 2 or 3 of them frequently, including my company one in the demand community. So, and I've got, oh my gosh, the notifications are insane. And so unless someone is like directly notified, I don't think people are checking it as often. But it's tough because the data also says that they are, but they may not be like engaging right away. So whenever you tag them, they get a different type of a notification. And I think that brings them like more frequently to the community itself to respond.
Yeah, I think it's great. And it really, it almost forces engagement in the community. Like, that probably wouldn't be there without it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely worth doing, because I think we're all busy with notifications in other places. And it's that little prompt I think you need, isn't it? Just to check in and see.
Well, oh, sorry. I was just going to say, well, and the thing to remember, and this is something like we talk about internally all the time, especially like with sales calls and like customer success and like ongoing like onboarding and enablement, is people are doing so much right now. I mean, everyone's roles are being consolidated. So what used to be like one full-time job, you've got 2 or 3 now. And so in community, I have to justify interrupting someone else's day where they're probably slam packed to come to my community to respond to a question. And so I don't want to just tag willy-nilly and it not be worth their time. And then like the time I actually need their advice and their help, they won't come help. And so that's something I think as community managers, like we have to be very cautious of and aware of, is we're asking for someone's time in a time where their time is incredibly limited. And so we have to be like very respectful of that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. It's great to hear the story, and the evolution of the demand community, which I love. But it would be great to, pick your brains like on the wider topic of B2B community, and, provide some, real kind of advice for businesses and marketers out there that are looking to potentially set up a B2B community, or, are thinking about the idea of throwing it around. Like, it's quite a hot topic. So I imagine, few people out there thinking about it. So, what do you think in terms of which businesses should be looking at investing in community building, and like what would the driving forces be behind that? Like, who should be doing this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question. So I'm going to answer a little bit differently, because I imagine it would be a disservice if I broke it down by industry, but instead I want to break it down in regards to current audience engagement. I think if you have an incredibly engaged audience, that's not yet a community. I also think if you have an engaged audience on LinkedIn, that's still not yet a community. And so you have to find a way to harness that engagement and that audience where they're connecting with each other, like a higher frequency. And so I think if you've got a high engaged audience, that's a really great spot. And I will put the caveat that the high engagement and the size of the audience should be incredibly relevant to the level of effort that you've put into it and the size of your company and the size of your ICP. So if I'm a really small coffee shop, and I want to build a community where we share like different recipes and we come together for book clubs. And let's say I see like 100 people a day and I've got, 20 or 30 people that are constantly engaging with stuff. While it doesn't sound like a lot, it's a really good foundation. Let's say I'm a massive B2B company and I get 5 likes on my LinkedIn post and no comments. I don't, create any type of, I'm not driving discussion on LinkedIn or in other social channels. I may not create a community in general, but let's say I have a really engaged customer base and we are constantly evolving and our tools are technical and we need like better customer education. I would start a customer community at that point. And provide resources and access to the product development and engineering team and loop my knowledge base in there. And same thing, let's say I'm really curious about like customer product feedback and product recommendations. I would put that under a customer community as well. So I think that's something to really consider is there's so many different types of communities. So you've got your customer communities, you've got communities of practice like what I have. I mean, there's like 5 or 6 of them. Even I think like NutriBullet has a community where they all just share recipes about things to blend in their NutriBullet. Yeah. And so, I mean, there's so many different types of communities. That's why I don't want to just keep it by industry or company size. But once again, I think it's really dependent on the level of engagement that you have. And I chatted with someone and I made a post about this a couple months back. And they were so excited about building a community. And I was trying to understand like what that meant for them. And they wanted someone to host an event, like a pizza dinner each week in a different location, different city, different state. And I said, I'm so sorry. I think you want an events planner because you're not asking me to build community because there's not, I don't think enough repetition. You're asking me to host a weekly pizza party at a totally different location where the people from weeks 1 won't go to week 2 because it's too far away. And it just kind of keeps going on. I was like, that's not really the same thing. Now, if there was a place for them to come after the pizza party or go to the community before the pizza party, I think that would be a different conversation, but that wasn't something that was interested. So I think a lot of companies right now are starting to try and drink the community Kool-Aid, but they're not doing anything with it yet. So, and the thing that I'm seeing a lot of too, I think I told you about that job description, is I'm seeing community get wrapped in to also create content, create and edit and post content, to also host all the events, host all the customer marketing and education advisory boards, to, I mean, I have demand gen in there too. I mean, all the stuff, and they're not even coming close to salaries that they should be. And so I think where companies are going to start, I don't want to say like dropping off on community, but I think community is going to start losing support in some companies because they're not putting the strong foundation to build a good community. They're not hiring a dedicated community manager that has experience to build something, so it's just tough, I think, on something like that.
Yeah, cool. So just want to go back to, the one thing you said about audience building before you have community. So like, just to clarify, you kind of saying that a successful community, starts with an audience in a different channel already outside of that community?
So I think that's a very loaded question, Dan.
It's too early for that.
Stirring the pot this morning. So I think, okay, let's look at the oldest example of what a community is. It was the nomads. They didn't have a digital space. They were a group of people that needed to travel together in order to survive. And essentially, on like a lower scale of things, our communities are that. It's a group of people like doing the best that they can and trying to survive together. So did they have a digital space for it? No. So I don't think you need a digital space. I mean, and even if you look at like what Meetup's done, yes, there's a digital space in the sense of it's basically an announcement board for events that you can find based off of what you're interested in, but you're still going in person or you're still meeting in Discord to play video games together. You know, like there's stuff like that. What I do disagree with a little bit, and I know this is incredibly controversial, and if someone wants to change my mind, send it over, that's fine, is I don't think LinkedIn is as true of a community platform or truly fosters community as well as actual communities can. And so I think I feel like that's kind of where you're going is LinkedIn a community? Like, is it, I mean, yeah, it's a community, but if you look at a lot of the conversations that are happening, it's through the direct messaging. It's not really through the threads and the replies, or it's happening in other communities. People are saying, oh, I saw this post on LinkedIn. What do you guys think about this? And just like going in on it there. And so I think that's something to be said too. I don't know. It's just that one's a really tough question, I think.
Yeah, I think you're kind of I do agree. Like LinkedIn doesn't feel like a community. It just feels like a place where people are sharing thoughts and knowledge. Whereas like it's almost like that community, like Demand, it's that safe space to ask a question and not be judged and
Mm-hmm.
get a response that you might not want, or be seen to ask that question. And yeah, communities
Yeah.
definitely provide that safety net around, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it says something when people are more often continuing the conversation in an actual community than on LinkedIn. And
Yeah.
I think that it's that level of safety. And I think people need to remember though too, is that level of safety isn't just something that happens. That comes through moderation, that
Mm.
comes through setting expectations, that comes through your community core values. One of the things we did whenever we first started was we had all of our members vote on our core values. And we presented that whenever we went public with the community. And we still have all that documentation around, because if your members are the ones building the core values, they're more likely to help enforce it because it's something that we've all agreed on. And so I think that's something, when you think about other communities like Twitter who have completely erased all their moderation, who have let go of teams whose whole job was to create a safe environment, I think it's a very special type of person that wants to keep posting on there and open up the gates of hell to see what happens. Like, we have to be very intentional about safeguarding our communities to make sure it's a safe spot for everyone to share their opinions. And one of our core things is you disagree with the idea, not the person. And so that's like a really big thing for me as we continue the conversations too.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point. Cool. So let's say, like, somebody listening is now, set on creating a community. They're pretty on board with either a customer or an open community. It's like, okay, that kind of fits our brand. We've got a bit of an audience already. People are kind of rallied around what we do. When we had a quick catch up last week, you were kind of diving into some of like the hard truths of being a community manager, and like, just actually setting the reality of people, if they are really going to go down this journey of building a successful community, like what's the reality of it, like on a day-to-day basis, on, what does it look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest hard truths that I always try and hone in on, because it's a tough conversation to have, is while everyone that you talk to at your company will probably be like, oh, we're so excited about community, unless there's KPIs tied to it, you're not probably going to get the support that you need. And it's honestly to no fault of their own. It's just the fact that we're all doing so much right now. And unless there's something tied to it, even if you did spiffs, I don't even know how efficient that would be. And so a company I had worked at before. I remember it was like pulling teeth, and since I wasn't a part of the marketing team, all of my design requests kind of got bumped. And I remember talking with our CEO, and he had no idea that we had launched a community. And he was like, "I'm sorry, who are you?" And I was like, "I've been here almost a year. We launched this community. You let me spend like $75,000. Like, you signed off on all this." And it was like the most upsetting thing, because community has to be a backbone of your company type effort. It has to go top down. And so if you're not able to get the support you need to be able to find people within the company that can help you get it. Because, you'll find a few people that'll want to help volunteer, and then they just get busy and life happens. You can't be upset at them because it's not really their job. And so like I said, unless you're tying it to KPIs, then it's going to be really, really difficult to get the support that you need. So I think that's a huge, hard truth. Another one is, especially for community managers, whenever you're going through the interview process, and hiring managers, whenever you're evaluating, you as a hiring manager have a duty to be open and honest about like where the community is in conception, and what the support actually looks like. A good example, there was a role I had interviewed with a couple of years ago from a very big company. And I was so excited. I went through it was like a 6-step interview process. And at the end of it, it was horrible. But at the end of it, they were like, "We really like you. Would you be interested in going to customer success?" And I was like, "You made me go through 6 steps of interviews to offer me a job that I had no interest in at the time." I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I was so disappointed. But what I learned after they didn't hire me for their community manager, and they built a community, and then 8 months later they fired the community manager and just dropped the community, was you have to be double and triple checking with every person you talk to along the way on what the actual intentions are, what the timeline to success looks like, and if there's financial support. So a lot of the hard truths in community is you won't get like any type of budget. Even if you're in marketing, like you're most likely not going to get the same as like demand generated or paid ads or anything like that. And so you have to figure out, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Boss, like depending on how much budget you get me, what does success look like? And so whenever I was interviewing with Gil, our CEO, my favorite conversation with him was, well, first off, I was so nervous. I was like, "I'm interviewing with the CEO. This is such a big thing." And he was like, "I want you to build me a community like Salesforce." And I was like, "Gil, are you going to give me like $30 million?" And he was like, "No." I was like, "Are you going to give me a staff of like 50?" And he was like, "No." And I was like, "Are you going to give me 10 years to make this happen?" He said, "No." And I said, "Then I can't build you Salesforce. Like, I can't build you Trailblazer community." And he was like, "Oh." And it was a fun conversation because we had built our rapport so quickly. And it was even more fun for me because it's something all of us as community leaders want to tell people. Like, if you're not going to give us this, then don't expect Salesforce and Trailblazers. Like, that's insane. And I'm like, but we could start at the foundation, and see where things scale up. Like Salesforce Trailblazer started with roundtables and like little meetups and stuff. So, you could start with that, but be like, the expectation of a $30 million funded community should not be the same as one that has $0 behind it. And so I think that's like another really important hard truth is, if you don't have the KPIs, if you don't have the financial support or like team effort support, then it's going to be incredibly difficult to get it going. And I think something that we see with a lot of community managers is they're going in right now and taking jobs, and they're really excited, and they're finding out that the person that hired me has no idea what he's doing or she's doing, and there's like no vision for what the community could be. And so I think that's another hard truth is you've got to get that vision locked in and really define what does success look like. And so that's something like any interview in the future, whatever in the past, knowing from the past, now planning, if I ever was to move which I don't want to, but you've got to ask that, like, what does success look like? And how do you measure that? And like, what are those numbers? Because I don't want to sign up for anything unless it was like with this, where I was able to create that, but I truly had faith in Jason that he would let me do that, which he did. So you
Yes.
really got to build those relationships and figure out what those numbers actually look like. Because I mean, changes everything.
Yeah, I think that's a great reality check for people that are looking to get into community building, and just how hard like it can be and stressful like on a day-to-day basis. So in terms of those KPIs that rightly have to be set out from the beginning, without them you're kind of screwed. Like you're doing nothing that can't be measured in terms of business impact. You're kind of putting yourself up for the axe. So like what kind of things should you be measuring from a B2B community to kind of prove success?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the things that we have been very focused on, I want to say, so I need to say this with the caveat. One of our goals is not necessarily hyper growth. Some communities are really focused on hyper growth, and that's great. At Sales Hacker, we went from like 9,000 to 30,000 my first year, and that's awesome. And like it was a lot of work, and it was really awesome. The demand community is not focused on hyper growth. What I'm most concerned about is hyper engagement, meaning I want the most amount of members actively involved in some capacity. And what we've seen is members, and I've got to pull up the hard numbers, because in the demand community, especially, while we're at about 2,200 members, we're adding probably like 10 to 15 members every other day or so. So it's not like crazy growth, but we're not doing anything to really promote. Like we're not sending like join. We're not doing any paid ads or anything like that. So with our hyper engagement, it's really important for us to focus on, are they using the community? Like, are they engaging the community? Are they liking posts? Are they responding? Are they messaging each other? And it's been interesting because I've got like a re-engagement campaign for folks who haven't been like posting or replying. And I think it's like 45 days out since their last post or reply or something like that. Because I mean, life happens, and sometimes you just can't get into the community, and I understand that. So I want to give time. But it's cool because I've had lots of members reply and be like, I have been messaging with so-and-so, and this is what I'm learning. And like, I don't like to post. And so if I see someone that's in a similar spot, I just go and DM them. I'm like, perfect. I am so happy with that. Like, that's the point of this, is for you to connect with people where you can learn from, you can share your experiences, and they can learn from you. So I'm like, that is just as good with me, but I can't track that. I can't track their, personal messages. So I'm like, oh, so that's kind of like my caveat on engagement and hyper growth. But for business case, and once again with the demand community, like we aren't using it as demand gen. It's more like we mentioned before, brand awareness. And so a lot of the success that we've seen it just takes time to find the data. So I'll put that out there too. Like, be patient with finding the data, and don't just make data say what you want it to say. Like, actually look at it and what it says. And so what we found was, after almost a year, we finally found all the numbers, was that opportunities that had a demand community member, a part of the buying committee, was closed, I think it's like 29 days, closed 29 days faster than those that didn't have a community member a part of it. And were 46.6% more likely to close win than those that didn't have a community member a part of it. So while we're not putting a bunch of spam in the community, we're not putting like a huge emphasis on bringing business from it, because I think like people see that we're doing this out of like the goodness of our heart, and like there's a lot of sincerity behind it, and people are getting responses to their questions, and they're getting their answers in a timely manner. I think that that's helping influence deals a lot faster and to close win more often too. So that's a
Yeah.
big KPI for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose like whilst the community isn't focused on pushing, metadata at actual members, like just in the conversations that happen, it does crop up every now and again. Like, LinkedIn ads channel, it's like, oh, how do I do these experiments and stuff like that? Oh, there's tools for that, so it does pop up just organically. So yeah, I think you're
honestly, one of my favorite, I've got a screenshot of it somewhere. It's in my like little Witten folder because I was like, yes, this is amazing. But a couple months back, there was this question that came up, and it was flat. Like, I had no idea. I was just so excited somebody asked, because someone was like, hey, we're evaluating metadata. What are your thoughts? And I think I was out at lunch or something, because I came back and there was like a whole thread, and it was really great because we had amazing advocates in there that were like, here's what we love about it. Here's things we're learning how to use better. And like, here's what we don't like. And it was funny because just like any other company, CS and sales is like, oh shit, we can't have the negative out there. And I'm like, you know what? If I was a customer, I would rather see a negative from an actual user where it's not that big of a negative than to be to be handed a customer review where it's all edited out. Like every tool is going to have a flaw that you may not like, but the next person may be totally fine with it. And so it's like, why should we gate that? Whenever they're going to find out eventually, if they buy the product and they don't like this, like they're going to be more upset because we weren't honest about it than if we just left the conversation. And I kind of stood up for it because I was like, just leave it. Like, I'm not deleting this, because like we need to be open and transparent with our customers. And if this is how a customer feels, what a great opportunity to try and rectify it with them. And we actually had a customer who was not happy. And I guess he had been like running campaigns wrong or something. And like, I think like something wasn't turned on right on his side of things. And one of our amazing onboarding implementation guys, Francisco, got in there and was like, hey, I'm Francisco. I'm here to help with this. Like, what's going on? And this person, I don't think ever submitted a ticket. So they've just been like suffering in silence and came to complain. And we were able to fix it like that. And he was so happy afterwards. And I'm like, what a blessing that we could do something like that. Like, how amazing that because of the community, we probably got a few more customers and a few other eyes on it. And people, depending on like where they were in the sales process, seeing this, that came up organically that we didn't touch at all, except to help our customer. And like, how cool for potential customers to see like, hey, we've got people here who want to help and will help you quickly when you need it most. And so I was like, what a great example. And so, like you said before, like, while it's not meant to drive business, I think it's really the awareness factor that we really lean into.
Yeah, and like organically it just happens because you're in the conversations in the right place, in the right topics where your product kind of fits in.
Yeah I mean, it makes such a big difference. It's huge.
Yeah, cool. So I think we'll start to wrap things up. Like in terms of kind of like any like last words of wisdom, advice you can give to anybody, any marketers, I suppose, that are looking to set up a B2B community for themselves, like, what are those few nuggets that you'd get them to take away from this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing is there's plenty of career opportunities. Because like I said at the beginning, like that was something I was so worried about, was making a big switch like that. But I think there's a lot of opportunity. It's worth being decisive. Don't take the first job that you think might be a good fit. Like, do the research, ask more questions, ask to get on a call with other people on the team. That was something with Jason and the team at Metadata. I was like, I want to talk to more people. He's like, great. Who do you want to talk to? Here's a list. Like, reach out, and I'll set you guys up. Like, it was really cool. Make sure that you're communicating the wins within the community, because it's incredibly easy for community to not be seen as value, like as important as sales or marketing or CS, but I think it's another amazing lever that companies could be using that they just aren't. So make sure that like you're highlighting the wins as much as you can. We do a weekly revenue call where I get to share like the amazing things that are happening in the community. I share screenshots and channels. And so I think that's a really big thing. And then also like make sure that you're locking in the type of support that you need and what that looks like. I've got a governance doc that I always share at conferences and stuff where I talk through like what I need from each team and at what frequency would I need it. So usually like for really big projects, that's something I'll tap into and be like, this is the expectation. Are you all okay with this? And if you can't do this, that's fine. Who can I tap it, for this support instead? And that makes a really big difference. And so, I think those are the biggest things. And I also think too, like we didn't really get into it earlier. But I know we did on our first call for this is community is incredibly emotionally exhausting because like you're dealing with people, it's not transactions, like you're in it for the long haul with all these folks. And so you're there for all the ups and downs, all the layoffs, all the new hirings. And so like your heart's in it. Like this isn't a job for someone who isn't willing to invest like their heart and soul into it. And so be aware that does take a lot from you. So make sure like you're scheduling times to do something that makes you happy. Like I've started taking work calls while I'm walking. Well, first off, I got my walking treadmill, so I'm walking all the time anyways. But sometimes I just need to get outside and I'll message people, be like, hey, I don't think we're going to be like screen sharing. This is a brainstorm call. Like, are you cool with just doing it while we're out walking? And it's awesome. I'll pop my AirPods in and go walk around the lake. And it's such a treat for me. And that I feel like my battery totally recharges. And so find what that looks like for you. And really try and spend time doing something like that. Cause it is very tiring for you too. So those are my like 5 takeaways, maybe 4 takeaways.
Yeah, I think that's 4. Amazing. Anyway, yeah, that was super useful. I think, we'll wrap things up. And what I will do, I'll put, if you're not in the Demand community already, I'll put a link in the episode of this Demand Decoded. Whether you're listening or watching on YouTube or whatever, you'll be able to find it in the description because it is really great. Like if you're a B2B marketer, seriously, like you should jump in there. And if you do have any questions about, paid advertising, ABM, like tools that you use, like HubSpot, then, jump in there and somebody like will give you incredible value. It's amazing how much people are willing to help and share. Like it truly is incredible. And I think, community is such a powerful thing, and it's only growing. So it was so great to have you on, Katie, and appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Well, I really appreciate y'all. Thank you for having me. And if anyone's got questions, feel free to message me on LinkedIn or Slack me. I'm always available. So thank you, Dan. Appreciate you.
Yeah, great stuff. Cool. So be sure to follow the Blend LinkedIn page for any future events and stuff. And you can listen back to any episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or basically anywhere. Just search for Demand Decoded and you'll probably find it. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Katie. It was great to have you, and see you next time. Bye.
Thanks, Dale.